The linen napkins were starched, folded into swans. The silverware gleamed. Alessa had outdone herself again, table settings, coordinated by season-matching floral centerpieces, name cards written in cursive gold ink. Mine just said, Lorene, not mom, not grandma. Just my name like I was a guest from down the street. I sat at the far end of the table. The platter came around once, chicken thighs overcooked, vegetables steamed to mush. I served myself quietly. A minute later, Alessa stood all smiles and manicured grace and announced, now something a little more special, just for family. From the kitchen she returned holding a silver tray with 7 perfectly cooked filet mignons still sizzling. A second trip revealed a white box tied with ribbon French pastries arranged like jewels. Everyone applauded. Plates were passed down. Her mother, her father, her brother and his wife, her cousin from Phoenix. Derek. Even little Ella got 1 medium rare cut in bites. I waited. But the tray never came to me. I cleared my throat gently. Alessa. She glanced down at me, a polite confusion stitched across her face. I think you missed me, I said, trying to keep my voice light. Her smile didn't waver. Oh, I only ordered for family. Silence. Just forks scraping plates. Someone coughed. My stomach clenched, but I smiled back. I see. Derek didn't look up. He cut into his steak like it required his full concentration. Across the table, Ella asked for more sparkling water. No one seemed to notice I was still holding my fork unmoving over a half-wilted salad. I turned to my son. Derek, I said softly. He didn't respond. Am I family or not? Now the table froze. Even the children stopped whispering. I could feel every pair of eyes watching us, but it was his eyes I searched for. He still didn't look at me. Don't do this, Mom. Not here. I set my fork down. It made a louder sound than I expected. I think this is exactly the place I said, though. My hands were trembling beneath the tablecloth. He looked up then, just once, but with nothing behind his eyes. No defense. No regret. Just discomfort. That was the moment I knew the answer. I stood slowly and walked to the kitchen, past the laughter that tried to rise again. I used to think love earned you a place. That if you gave everything, time, money, sleep, your body, your years, it meant something. That someone would remember. Derek was 11 when his father died. A jackknifed trailer on I-57. 1 phone call. 1 officer at the door. 1 folded flag. After that, it was just the 2 of us. I worked swing shifts in the ER, patched wounds, cleaned blood from the floor, ate my dinners, standing beside vending machines. I'd sleep in my car between shifts and still make it home in time to pack Derek's lunch. I remember holding his hand through asthma attacks, through math homework, through high school heartbreaks. When he got accepted to university on scholarship, I cried in the grocery store right there between frozen peas and juice boxes. I never missed a parent-teacher meeting. I never asked for thanks. When he brought Alessa home, I smiled. She was polished, driven sharp. She talked over Derek and corrected me when I said coupon wrong, but I told myself she just came from a different world. I bought her a scarf that first Christmas. She never wore it. The next year, she gave me a re-gifted lotion set, still had a To Rebecca sticker on the bottom. When they said they'd found the perfect starter home but needed help with the down payment, I didn't hesitate. I sold my second car, took a loan against my retirement savings. It's nothing I said. It's for family. Derek hugged me. Alessa said, we'll pay you back soon. They never did, and I never asked. That first dinner in their new place, I noticed they'd hung a canvas over the kitchen table that said, family is everything. I thought it was sweet. I didn't notice then that there were only 6 chairs and 1 was folding. I told myself it was temporary, that I'd always have a seat. I'd earned one, hadn't I? But that lunch proved otherwise. So as I stood in their kitchen that day, pretending to fix my lipstick in the reflection of their stainless steel fridge, I knew something had shifted. Something I couldn't undo. It wasn't just the steak. That was just the final, sharpest cut. The others were quieter, like paper slits across the same skin layered over years. Easy to excuse until they weren't. The first time Alessa brought her own dessert to my home, I had baked an apple crisp from scratch. She smiled as she walked in, carrying a glass tray. Just in case. My family has more specific tastes. She placed it directly in front of Derek before I could set down my own dish. I laughed along. I even served hers first. She once rearranged my living room during a visit. Said the photos on the mantel made the place feel dated. I watched her tuck away the frame of Derek in his high school graduation gown, the one I had paid for, by selling off a set of antique brooches. She didn't ask. She just moved things. And when I brought it up to Derek later, his response was the same one I'd memorized by heart. She's just high-strung. You know how she is. Yes. I did know. I knew how she'd correct my pronunciation in front of her friends. How she would roll her eyes when I used coupons at the grocery store. How she once introduced me to a colleague as Derek's mom. She used to be a nurse or something. I said nothing. Again and again, I said nothing. I kept bringing gifts to birthdays I wasn't invited to. I kept showing up with side dishes to events where I wasn't expected to contribute. I kept pretending not to notice when she posted family photos online and cropped me out. Because I believed if I stayed quiet long enough, they would hear me. But silence doesn't echo in their house. It just disappears. And now, after the filet mignon and that saccharine smile after the deliberate omission of a plate, I'm done pretending. I didn't speak at the table. Not then. Not fully. But I did open the drawer when I got home. The one with the deed. The one I'd nearly forgotten was still in my name. The house was too quiet when I came back. I kicked off my shoes and stood in the kitchen without moving. My purse still hung from my shoulder. The smell of detergent clung to my clothes from Alessa's linens. I hadn't touched my plate. I hadn't eaten since breakfast. The coffee in the pot was cold, but I poured a cup anyway. It burned less that way. I sat at the dining table staring at the steam that wasn't rising. The silence felt different this time. Not peaceful, not hollow. It felt like a door had closed and sealed behind me. And I wasn't sure if I'd been locked in or locked out. I thought about Derek. About the way he couldn't even look at me. The way he let her speak for him. The way he kept chewing like my question didn't deserve an answer. I didn't cry. I'd already done that. In garages. In dark cars. In guest bathrooms with the fan running. Instead, I stood up and walked down the hall to the small oak desk in the spare room, the one I kept for bills and old tax folders. Third drawer on the right, back corner. The manila file was still there. I pulled it out gently, like it might crumble after all these years. Inside was the property deed. My name still sat at the top, clean and unchallenged. When Derek and Alessa wanted to buy their house, they didn't have the credit or the full down payment. I'd offered to help, gave them most of the money, and signed for the mortgage to get them a better rate. The plan was always to transfer it once they were stable. I even had the papers drafted. But I never signed. Derek asked me about it at least a dozen times. "We just want to get everything in order," he'd say. "It's not about control." And I'd nod and say I'd look into it. But I didn't. Not out of spite. Not even out of caution. Just something told me to wait. I tucked the file under my arm, walked back into the kitchen, and placed it on the counter next to the cold cup of coffee. It was time to do more than wait. The last time I made a pumpkin pie from scratch, it sat untouched on the passenger seat of my car for 3 hours. It was the day before Thanksgiving. I'd called Alessa to ask what time I should arrive. She sounded distracted, like I'd caught her mid-errand. "Oh, actually, we're keeping it really small this year," she said. "Just immediate family." "Derek didn't tell you," my mouth went dry. "No, he didn't. There was a pause. Then she said, "Well, maybe next year. Happy Thanksgiving," and hung up. I didn't call back. I didn't text Derek. I just sat there holding the phone like it might ring again and undo what had just happened. The next morning, I woke early anyway. Out of habit, I rolled out the crust-roasted fresh pumpkin, used the good cinnamon. I wrapped the pie in foil, slid it into the car, and drove. I didn't know where I just needed to be out of the house. I ended up in the parking lot of a hardware store parked in the far corner, staring at nothing. My hands were still sticky with flour. My chest was tight with something I didn't want to name. An hour later, I opened my phone, and there they were. Photos posted on Alessa's page, Derek carving a turkey, her father laughing over wine, her nieces setting the table, 12 people, all smiling, all immediate family. I stared at the screen until my vision blurred. That evening, I called Derek. He answered on the second ring. "I saw the pictures," I said. He sighed. "Mom, please don't make this about you." My breath caught. "I didn't. You did." He said nothing. I hung up. The pie went into the trash the next morning. I couldn't even bring myself to taste it. I never made that recipe again. Now, standing in my kitchen with the deed still spread open beside me, I thought about that pie. How something made with love could be so easily discarded, just like I had been. But not this time. This time I wasn't going to knock on a door that stayed locked. Derek didn't tell me when he lost his job. I found out by accident months after it happened. Alessa slipped during a phone call saying, "Well, with Derek, home so much now." Then she caught herself paused too long and changed the subject. When I asked him directly, he admitted it. "There were cuts," he said. "It wasn't personal. I didn't push. I just asked how they were managing." He said things were tight, that Alessa's marketing work wasn't consistent, that they were behind on utilities, on the car note, on the mortgage. So I offered. Not the full amount. Just enough each month to keep things moving. I never wanted it to feel like a handout. I wrote the checks, quietly dropped them in the mail, and told myself it was temporary. Just a bridge until Derek found something new. That was 2 years ago. I dipped into the savings I'd spent 3 decades building. The same fund I once imagined would take me to Maine in the fall, or maybe out west to see the redwoods. Instead, it became their lifeline. Rent, groceries, repairs. I paid them like I was on payroll, and they said thank you at first. Then they stopped saying anything at all. That week after the lunch, I opened my checkbook and stared at the blank slip. My pen hovered over the line. The envelope sat ready beside it. Then I reached up, tore the check out clean, and ripped it down the center. No warning, no note, just silence. The next morning, I called my lawyer, Georgia Monroe. She handled my estate planning 5 years ago and always took my calls on the first ring. "I need to initiate a formal notice," I said, "on the property." She didn't ask why. She didn't need to. We set a meeting for Friday. I scanned the deed and emailed it within the hour. That night, I slept with the folder under my pillow, not out of fear, but because it was mine, something no one could take without my permission. The house they lived in had always belonged to me. They just forgot. They invited me back the next day. Alessa sent a text that morning, something half sincere about patching things up. Derek followed with a call. "Let's not blow this out of proportion. Mom," he said, "come back. Let's talk like family." Like family. I arrived at 6:05 p.m. sharp. Same house, same table. But this time, I didn't bring a pie or a bottle of wine. I brought a folder thin, clean, closed with a paperclip. Dinner was quieter than usual. Fewer jokes, fewer sideways glances. Alessa served chicken this time, no special courses. Derek offered me water twice. I didn't touch my glass. We were halfway through the meal when I set my fork down, reached into my bag and placed the folder between the salt shaker and Derek's napkin. "What's this?" Alessa asked. I didn't answer right away. I let them both look at it. Let them wonder. Then I said, "You served me silence." "Here's mine." Derek opened the folder. His shoulders stiffened. Alessa leaned over, reading fast. "These are copies of the original deed," I said calmly. "And the letter from my attorney." "Lorene," Alessa said, already shifting her tone. "I don't understand you, Will," I said. Derek cleared his throat. "You're not actually evicting you," I interrupted. "No, not yet." They both looked relieved. "But I am notifying you, legally, that I still own this house. Entirely." Alessa's mouth opened, then closed. She looked to Derek. He said nothing. I reached for my napkin, wiped my mouth, and stood. "For years I paid your bills, your mortgage, your groceries. I said nothing while you handed me leftovers and called it kindness." "We didn't mean," Derek began. "You didn't stop her," I said. The table went still. "I won't yell. I won't beg. I've done both before. I won't do it again." I picked up my purse, slid the folder back inside. "You have 45 days to decide whether you want to speak to me with truth or with lawyers." No one moved. Not even Ella, who had been coloring at the corner of the table. As I walked out, Alessa said something I couldn't hear, and Derek didn't follow. The first call came 2 days later. My niece Cammie, the one who usually sent obligatory birthday texts and nothing more, rang at 8:17 p.m. "Is it true?" she asked. No greeting. Just her voice tight with disbelief. "They really left you out like that?" I didn't ask who told her. I didn't need to. "I was there," I said. "You can decide for yourself what counts." Cammie went quiet, then exhaled. I don't even know what to say. I told my mom if I'd seen that with my own eyes, I would have flipped the table. "I didn't need to flip it," I replied. I just stood up. That was all I said. I didn't go into detail. I didn't talk about the file or the lawyer. I didn't name names. I didn't have to. Word had moved faster than I ever could. Aunt Marion left a voicemail the next morning. "Your dignity at that table said more than anyone screaming ever could." By Friday, I'd gotten 4 texts and 2 emails from cousins I hadn't heard from in years. One of them, Greg, who used to treat Alessa like royalty, wrote, "We're not going to their Christmas dinner this year, just so you know." I didn't respond. I didn't want to be part of a side. I just wanted the truth to float wherever it went. People started calling it the steak incident, as if it were a scandal from a television drama. I let them make their own decisions. Let them sit with the memory of who said what and who said nothing. I didn't tell them about the deed. I didn't tell them about the check I'd torn up or the lawyer who answered my call on the first ring. That part was mine. But I listened. I listened as voices I hadn't heard in years told me they saw it. They believed it. They remembered how many pies I'd brought, how many gifts I'd wrapped, how many chairs I'd been asked to fold up quietly. And slowly, without asking for it, I realized something had shifted. This time, I wasn't the only one who'd gotten up from that table. He knocked just after 7. I'd been expecting it, but not that night. I didn't open the door right away. Just stood behind it, listening. No shouting, no demands. Just the soft rhythm of someone waiting. When I opened it, Derek was standing there in the same sweatshirt he wore in college, the one I'd mended twice. He looked tired, more from shame than from lack of sleep. "Can I come in?" he asked. I stepped aside. We sat at the kitchen table, the same one where I used to quiz him on spelling words, where he'd cried over scraped knees, where he once told me he wanted to be someone who helps people. That table had heard more from my son than I had in years. "I don't know what to say," he began. I waited. "Mom, I was stuck between you and Alessa." "No," I said calmly. "You weren't between us. You were behind her. There's a difference." He looked down. "I didn't want to lose either of you." "You didn't lose me," I said. "You left me." He flinched, and maybe for the first time he heard it out loud. Not as a criticism, but as a fact. I didn't know what she was planning. The lunch, the steak, That wasn't me. No, I said. But the silence. That was. I stood, walked to the counter and retrieved the envelope. I placed it on the table between us. What's this notice to vacate? You and Alessa have 45 days to find another arrangement. He didn't touch it. You'd really do that? He asked. To your own son, I looked at him, and for a moment, I saw the boy I used to know. The one who held my hand crossing the street. The one who drew Mother's Day cards in crayon. But I also saw the man who let his wife humiliate me in front of our entire family. No, I said. I'm doing it because I'm your mother. He opened his mouth to speak again, but I was already rising. I walked him to the door. Quietly. And I didn't watch him go. I had other things to do. They moved out on a Thursday. No goodbye, no note. A moving truck pulled up around 9. I didn't watch from the window, just waited until the driveway was clear. When I stepped inside, the house didn't feel like mine. Not yet. It smelled like her perfume, floral and expensive, and something bitter underneath. The walls still held their framed prints, empty hooks where my family photos used to be. I opened every window, let the wind sweep through. That weekend, I painted the kitchen cabinets. The old cream color always felt too polite, too neutral, chosen no doubt to match Alessa's curated life. I chose a deep pine green instead. It didn't match anything. I liked that. I painted slowly, coat by coat, no music. Just the sound of the brush, the soft rhythm of something being redone. When I was done, I brewed a fresh pot of coffee and sat by the window, the one where Alessa once rolled her eyes as I offered to help with dishes. This time, no one scoffed. No one asked me to leave the room. No one handed me a folding chair. Just me, my hands, my coffee. The silence didn't sting anymore. It held me. People still called. Some asked how I was doing. Some asked what really happened. I gave short answers. We've gone our separate ways. Things needed to change. That was enough. No one needed the full story. Not really. Because the story wasn't just about being left out of a meal. It wasn't about steak or dessert or an empty plate. It was about knowing finally what I'd allowed and what I wouldn't allow again. For years, I fed people who left me hungry. I poured from my own cup until there was nothing left, and then I still set the table. Still offered seconds. Still smiled. Now the table is smaller, the portions simpler, but every chair is earned. I don't need a room full of people to feel full anymore, and I don't need them to see me. I just needed to stop disappearing in a house I paid for. I see myself now. Clearly. Quietly. Completely.